have ourselves a brand new interview with 4Gamer, talking to the director of PSO2 New Genesis, Yuya. And, well, you know what that usually means whenever he opened his mouth. But nonetheless, we have a whole bunch of new information and coming about a lot of different things. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. With, of course, discussing the player housing and creative faces inside of PSO2 New Genesis. And one of the fourth things right out of the gate here is the core information as far of how the players are actually taking part in creative faces and how many players have actually dropped off, as well as interacted with it and still interacting with creative faces as a whole. And of course, going by as a stat, that of course Yuya ended up giving up here, we know that at least 50% of the player base actually did take part in elite opening creative faces and going to it, with of course a 20 to 30% who actually got into it at all, like creating, moving things around, and just interacting with the creative part, not just heading in there to look at faces or just opening up their own house and quickly leaving. So with about 20 to 30% of the player base interacting with it, we can see that the number is, I gotta say, a little bit lower than I originally expected, especially with how very much PSO2 is as far as socializing and the community that comes from that, and like also dealing with the screenshot community and making an environment for that type of stuff. But nonetheless, look like at the time of this interview, about 20 to 30% of the player base is what roughly interacting with the content. And while we are still on the topic of creative faces, I know a lot of people very much want creative faces to be the crossover with other ships, so you can play with other people and experience other creativity within PSO2 New Genesis. And of course, we did get a question asking specifically about that. And of course, Yuya ended up kind of like, for the most part, dumping down the ideal of that. And of course, some of the examples were given offhand for why Elite for now that not a thing, it probably won't be a thing, is of course it due to the actual server volume, as well as how the server is set up right now. It seemed to be not exactly the most easier thing to actually get running. And of course, I know right out of the gate, a lot of you, when it comes to server volume, might be questioning, especially on the global side, as far like the player base and how it doesn't seem like there is a ton of players. But realistically here, we got to keep in mind here is, of course, a lot of the decision, if not the majority, or let's just be honest, 90% of the decision here is, of course, made for the Japanese market. And the thing to keep in mind is, of course, with how big a PSO2 is, and by proxy, NGS is in Japan, it makes sense that it would be a problem going forward for this not really having that ability to do cross ships. With that being said, I know, of course, let's go ahead and discuss the whole thing of why was it designed in such a way to be like that. And of course, I think most of that is probably have a lot to do with, of course, not really seeing a real desire for a courtship communication, especially since, of course, they do charge for characters on other ships once you get a pat. I believe it's still three. I believe it's still three a character per ship. And then, of course, once you bring in Japan, with last I saw Elite with PSO2, we was at roughly, I think it was, what, 15 servers altogether. And of course, with having you be able to buy the ability to move between ships, as well as buy extra character slots. I think this might have been a design choice, not only because, let's be honest, it is a lot less tasking to worry about, like, trying to connect everything between multiple ships, but also probably have a little bit to do with monetization reason. Once again, I got no proof of that. It's just something I honestly wouldn't doubt, especially when you look at the player base happening appeal to the money they can make, and with how many characters people play, especially on the Japan side. Not saying it the reason, but I wouldn't doubt it as well beyond the normal global issues that they are having at all, like winding it in that and making it something that would be elite doable, especially with it coming so much later in the lifespan of NGS. And then our next question is, of course, about saving your designs, especially since we do have multiple different themes coming in. And of course, the question mainly was asking, is there a way that you will be able to make a save of your whole island before you refresh it to go between themes, or if you want to change something up a more long term? And of course, we did get a answer to that of being mainly boiled down to, of course, having the areas and how much space they actually take up on the stable side, that actually making full-on save of a whole area is pretty much right now not really doable, just because of how the save operate and how much space it takes. But of course, they did bring up how you can buy a ticket that will allow you to have a couple extra islands to play around on and to make different things. And this kind of rolled back into a question or ideal that I know a lot of us have had over the last couple months, if not like roughly a year at that point, of with creative faces, the ideal of letting the player actually make content. Because I know we all want like dungeon, we want a more in-depth gameplay stuff, we want to have all the stuff that we had any in bait PSO2 that have not been brought into NGS, and with the possibility of maybe never being a part of NGS. And of course, I know a lot of players have been the attitude of like, if you're not going to do it, let us do it, which brings us to like making the dungeons and stuff. But that brings up the issue of how do you do that if you have to buy extra space in the case on the server itself to allow you to make that type of stuff and submit that kind of stuff. Because let's be honest here, if you're someone who want to make that type of content for the player base or maybe for yourself, obviously you want to be able to make as many levels as humanly possible for you to submit out so people can actually play it and take part in it. And of course, that kind of plays into the of not being like impossible by any means. That they didn't really talk in the interview about that specifically, but at the same time, I could see that being a issue a long term after that ideal coming a reality, or in the case, not becoming a reality, just because of the whole setup behind that. And honestly, if you can't make, dozens upon dozens of levels, that is extremely restricted, and in return, lose a lot of its desiredness there. Once again, did not actually comment on that fully if that will ever happen after being able to make that type of content. But I kind of see this as maybe a hint that maybe that type of design after allowing the player base to make their own dungeon content is probably pretty far out of reach if ever gonna happen. So a little thing to keep in mind there, that it looked like the main reason Elite for us having a very restricted number of faces when spending real money to buy extra is so limited. And from this interview, that is pretty much everything that it tied to player houses and creative faces. I will go ahead and have the article and interview linked down in the description, because it does go through a whole bunch of other stuff, from a drop way to combat encounter to quest design. There is a lot to the interview, and of course, I will be making another video here very soon going into any more of that. So if you haven't already, make sure to thumbs up, subscribe, hit all the bells so you don't miss out on that video or any other PSO MMO gaming related content right here on the channel, with new content coming every day to every other day right here on YouTube. So once again, thumbs up, subscribe, hit all the bells, and of course, I do want to give a very special thank you to everybody that is supporting the channel here over on Twitch, Patreon, and of course, hitting that wonderful join button here on YouTube. And if you want to support the channel and get a whole bunch of extra goodie, I will have links in the description where you can do just that. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and do it for me when it comes to creative faces, and I will see you in the next part where we're going to talk about some combat and world drop. But to then, I will go ahead and see you in the comments.